Welcome to the BMX Commentator Podcast with your host, BMX World Cup and World Championship commentator, Rich Eames. You'll hear casual yet in-depth stories from BMX athletes and coaches, industry leaders, and all manner of BMX-connected people as we dive deep behind the scenes into what makes BMX racing the best sport on two wheels. Grab a spicy snack and your favorite beverage and get ready to listen in as the gate drops on yet another killer BMX conversation.
All right, we're back. The BMX Commentator Podcast, episode 22. Can't believe we're 22 episodes in now on this podcast. And we've got another great guest for show number 22. It is none other than 2024 Olympian, all-round ripper, Florida resident and farm owner, Jeremy Smith. Jeremy, lovely to have you on the podcast. Welcome.
Thank you, Rich. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I know we're chatting all year to set this up, and I'm glad we finally got to make it happen.
Yeah, so am I. I'm definitely glad we got to make it happen because, you know, your story's, you know, a little bit different to everybody else's in terms of what you're doing now with, you know, Aker brand and all that kind of stuff. And I really wanted to just dig in and find out, you know, the origins of the brand and how it all began and what plans you've got and all the work you've put in so far. I think there's a real story there to be had because there's not many BMX racers now, elite ones, who are running a BMX brand alongside actually having a racing career as well. So it's a really nice kind of, I think the word's juxtaposition. I can't remember. But anyway, it's a nice story. So we'll dig into that. So I think that's probably the best place to start with Aker brand. So, yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about how the brand came about and anything that you can tell us really about the origins of it?
Yeah, so I think just the idea of having like a training compound stemmed back from when I lived up here where I'm at now in Ohio with my parents. My older brother, Josh Smith, he raced elite for a while. He's racing Vet Pro now, and my grandparents owned, I don't know the correct term for it, but like an aggregates business. So they sold dirt, processed dirt, mulch, gravel, landscaping, mulch and soil and stuff for the garden. And we always had access to machines. My dad worked there, and we would always, you know, beg my grandpa to let us bring a big front end loader on the weekends. And we were always just building stuff in my parents' backyard, and all the great riders in Ohio would always come over and we would just ride, dig, have fun. So I think just growing up in that environment definitely, you know, helped lead me to create Aker brand with my we might as well call him my brother at this point, Will Grant. So I think that helped stem a lot of Aker brand. And then I think also at the beginning of 2016, before I actually moved to Florida and moved in with Will, I stayed with Nick Long he took over his dad's house in Lakeside, California, near Chula. And I stayed there for maybe a month or so. And it was just awesome. Like staying there with Nick, that's really when I decided, I was like, okay, I gotta, you know, be in BMX full time, because at that point, you know, we can talk about this later, but I was still trying to figure out, like, am I going to be a full-time racer? Am I going to race for fun and go to work and stuff like that? So I think that's what really, you know, helped us evolve Aker brand. And then I moved in with Will, and he had people that would come stay with him during winter, and then I had friends that wanted to come stay with us during winter. And it just, like, after a year or two of living with him, we're like, man, we got to get some property. We got to build a compound. Like, we need more room for people to come stay. Like, Florida's turning into a crazy hot spot for BMX racing. And not that we wanted to capitalize on that, but it just made so much sense to us.
Yeah. It seems that whereas California used to be the hot spot in the 90s or whatever it was, now,
yeah,
already you've got 2 Supercross hills, you've got a multitude of tracks to choose from, you've got a really competitive state series there. It makes sense for, you know, quite a few BMXers to be based in that part of the world.
Yeah.
So when you actually bought the farm, how long ago was that? Was that a couple of years ago, maybe more?
It's been about exactly 3 years since we have moved into the house that's on the farm. So a little backstory on that. We had been searching for properties for probably 2 years while we were just, trying to grow up ourselves, making sure we had a good credit score and we could show that, we made money because, that's hard with BMX racing, showing that you actually earn an income and stuff like that. So I was giving it one last shot to make Tokyo. We had it was 3 World Cup stops, but the last 2 were in Colombia. So first one was in Verona, and pretty much for me to make the Tokyo team, I needed to get like 3 podiums out of the, 6 race days? 6 race days that were available, and went to Verona, and I was riding really good. I think I went out in the quarters on the first day, and then the second day I hit the dirt super hard, broke my hand, was supposed to go straight to Colombia for the World Cups, and I'm pretty sure, like, traveling home from Verona, I found the listing for the farm we ended up buying, the Aker Farm. So it was just kind of crazy how that worked. Like, a big goal obviously got shot down from a injury, and then lo and behold, I find the Aker brand farm online when I'm traveling home. So who knows, maybe that the property we got would have never came about if I didn't crash and break my hand and lose out on, I don't want to say lose out on an Olympic spot, but not get to finish out the races to, potentially earn one.
Yeah, that's mad. That's a crazy story. That's almost like, destiny that you had
meant
that
to
injury
be.
and then you find the property. That's a pretty amazing story. So
Yeah.
So when you got to actually get the farm, what kind of state was it in when you actually took possession of it?
Yeah, it was pretty rough. No one had lived there for probably over 5 years. There was tons of trash, and the guy who was selling it was he was a realtor, but he was like an old cowboy guy in his late 70s maybe, and he's like, we're just selling this land. The house is of no value. And Will and I are looking at each other. We're like, yeah, you don't want to include any extra cash on that house. Yeah, it's not worth anything. But we're looking at each other like, this is what we need. We can't afford a beautiful, nice house on farmland. So yeah, it was rough, and I spent, I think, the first 3 or 4 months living in my parents' RV, and Will Grant, my business partner, best friend, pretty much brother from another mother, he was sleeping out in a tent, and he's super organic and just one with the land. So I was like, dude, I got this RV, like, you don't have to sleep in a tent. He's like, no. He's like, I'll never get a chance to do this again. I'm staying out in the tent. So we spent the first, 3 or 4 months, like probably 4 months, the end of 2021 to the beginning of 2022, just waking up every day, throwing away trash, cleaning up the property, fixing what we could in the house that we felt comfortable, and just trying to get it livable.
Yeah, because I remember seeing on like the YouTube channel the renovations that you did to, I think it was the kitchen and that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking at the time, blimey, that place needs some serious work. So, how does that level of work and commitment that you've obviously put in, how does that translate to effects on your actual racing career? Did that mean that your training, etc., had to take a little bit of a back seat? How much of an effect did it have?
Yeah, it definitely took a little bit of a backseat. I think going into the 2022 season, I knew that I wasn't going to be, at my best. And it was one of those things where, like, I was prepared to, struggle a little more with racing because I was taking so much time to just work on the property, get the house livable, a place for me to just, when I was done training, to just relax and to be able to be comfortable, which the house was nowhere close to that. So like I was working, trying to do a little training, and then when I was done training, I was going back to work on the house. But the 2022 season, like I still had a good base from 2021. So when I started 2022, I was like, oh, I'm still competitive. I'm still getting in mains. And then I just noticed as 2022 went on, like it was getting harder and harder for me to just, I don't want to say stay motivated, but it was just, I was wore down. Honestly, I was pretty wore down, and I was struggling with my results to where I wanted to be. But I knew if I could get this place livable, kind of, I guess, up and running to where we can have guests come to stay, I knew it would be worth it. And then I knew I could still have plenty of time to get ready for Paris as well.
Yeah. So when you got to that point then where the house was livable, how long was it before the track build started? Because obviously you started with, I think it was the 2 straight track, wasn't it? And you've just done the extension and that kind of stuff. I'm assuming that wanting to get the track up and running was a priority once the house was done. So how long did that one take?
I wouldn't even say we were 100% finished with the house before we even started planning the track and getting to work on that. It was, I would say we moved in the house by February. I mean, January, it was, we were living in it, but it wasn't nearly finished. And then I think we started building the track maybe in like March. So pretty quick. It was a big priority for us to at least just have something there to ride.
Absolutely, because it's the dream, isn't it? Having that facility there, you walk out of the back door, I think you've got a gym, haven't you, on the patio, and then the track a little bit further along, and it's just like, for most BMX kids, I think that would be the ultimate dream, just to have their own, backyard training facility that they can go on every single day and not have to travel anywhere. So, I'm sure you've got some rather envious BMX parents out there going, how can we do that? Yeah. So after that came along then, the house was livable, you were ready to take guests in, the track was done. When did the whole turning it into a facility where people could move into, how long did that take to come to fruition?
So we had our first guest, I think at the end of January, from Canada, Curtis Cray. Actually, Irma Miller, that runs the Sarasota BMX track. She's like, hey, I know you guys are, building your training place, blah, blah, blah. She's like, there's a rider from Canada that wants to come stay. Like, are you guys ready? And we're like, not really, but you know how BMXers are. Like, as long as we got a place to lay our head, we can kind of make do with the environment and the way the house looks and all that. So yeah, we had Curtis come, and just him being from Canada and the Canadian people loving Florida, that really just helped us kind of just really open up as like people knowing that this is a place where you can come stay and train and be able to ride in Florida. But it's still, I think people are still, learning about it, hearing about it, and even just realizing that, you can come to Florida, stay with me, stay with Will. Rain Langford lives with us full time. We have another pro from Pittsburgh, Michael Reck, who lives with us full time now. So I think it's still really coming to fruition right now. Yeah.
Do you have a specific business model in mind for getting people in? Do they just book and come for like specific periods? And like, say you've got the 2 guys living with you. How does it work for the kind of casual BMXer who wants to come in and immerse themselves in that BMX environment?
Yeah, so we're looking for younger, like the lowest or the youngest riders we like to have are like 15. The riders that are ready to, start working their way into junior men, and then obviously young pros, riders that race U23, and then elite riders. So that's kind of how we break our pricing down, is by UCI classes, which is junior, U23, and elite. And those are the riders we're really looking to come stay with us. That's kind of, I'm obviously still training as an elite rider, and we're not really, as far as like a beginner or intermediate to come stay with us, we're not really, I'd say, quite ready for that yet, because, I'm still training, doing my own thing. So it's more of a place for a younger rider who's ready to work his way into that pro class can come and, get a taste of what it's like to be a full-time professional BMX racer.
Yeah.
And
sorry, go on, carry on.
Yeah. And as far as like, we don't really have a schedule of like, we're doing a training camp this month. It's kind of just what's convenient for the rider that wants to come. If he wants to come during the summer, the winter, and just send me a message, Aker Brand or Will a message, and figure out what works best for you.
Yeah, because that was going to be my question. Do you kind of structure it so they get coaching and that kind of thing, or do they just come in and just take advantage of the facility and work off their own program? Do you split it like that, or is it just pretty much every man for himself?
We don't necessarily offer like a training program or anything like that. Like, anyone who comes is more than welcome to, follow along with me and do my training with me, and I can, help any way I can. A lot of riders that come already have a coach and a training program, and we'll just try to coordinate our days to where, if we're all doing gym the same day, or sprints or track, that way we can, train together, have a good group of riders, push each other, and just build the morale.
Yeah, because I've definitely seen a few videos in the run up to the Grands as well, where you had Josh Jolly there and Cameron Larson and that kind of thing. And it must be a fantastic environment to have riders like that, where you're just like pushing each other on and driving each other to get better. Do you
Exactly.
think that's a good shout?
Yeah. I think that's pretty much spot on. And I think it's great, when we have a 16-year-old expert who's looking to be junior men, and we're like, all right, we're riding the track today. And then, someone like Isaac Kennedy comes, or Cam Larson, or Ryan Tugas. Like, we had a ton of riders coming, and I think it's great for them, for the younger kids to be there and get to be around guys like that, watch them, ask them questions and whatnot.
Yeah. Certainly, if you can't get motivated in an environment like that, surrounded by those kind of people, you shouldn't be racing BMX in the first place. So yeah, it sounds like an awesome facility. What plans have you got for it moving forward?
Man, I got some big dreams there for the place. I would love to do a full-size track. I mean, I'm even dreaming of a supercross track, but building a hill like that costs a lot of money. So, we're trying to get sponsors for the farm that could help fund that. And actually, Will's, one of his longtime sponsors, My Radar, which is a pretty awesome weather app. So you click on the app and it just shows, it's kind of like Google Maps or Apple Maps or whatever GPS you use on your phone. Like, you click on the app and it just shows wherever you're at, and it shows the radar, like if there's rain coming through, the weather for the day and all that. And they actually just partnered with us and took the naming rights of our track. So it's now the My Radar BMX track at Aker Farms. So that's been a huge help for us. And that's really what helped us, expand the track and get more jumps and all that. So right now, our next goal is to just improve the gym and keep improving the scenery around the farm, because there's still, stuff to clean up. And as far as me, I feel like that's kind of my role in the place, is just the visual aspects of it and planning the projects and, working on the projects myself. So with racing, like especially this year, I don't know if I was gone a full 6 months out of this year, but sure felt like it. So yeah, it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, definitely. It kind of reminds me of a BMX version of the Baker's Factory. I see a lot of the Baker's Factory stuff online, and obviously they're based in Florida as well. So you've got a fantastic model to kind of look at and work from. Obviously, BMX isn't as, multi-million dollar as, AMA Supercross, but, to have a BMX version of that, within the Florida area, it's going to be a draw for a lot of people. So it sounds utterly amazing. It's the kind of thing my lad, like my son's 13 now, and he's obsessed with his racing. And if I said, we're going to Jeremy's, he'd be like, I'd just be like, frothing. He'd be chomping at the bit to get there. So I can imagine a lot of young kids would want to, come out and spend some time there. So it sounds like an amazing facility, and everything I've seen of it looks amazing as well. So I just can't wait to see what you do with it next.
Yeah.
So just moving on from that a little bit, obviously you've got the Aker brand as well. So was that a deliberate decision to put something in conjunction with the farm, or did you have a separate plan for that?
Not really. When I first moved to Florida, Will started working with another race rare brand, and I think just being a part of that and learning the ropes of it, and it just made a lot of sense for us. We're doing coaching at these other tracks. We should be, setting up our own brand, having merch for sale. Like, we're going to the tracks. It just kind of all falls under one umbrella. And then, so we kind of started that the same time as we started the farm, and really just trying to, use the merch to promote the farm, use the farm to promote our merch, and just have it go, kind of full circle.
Yeah. So what's the response been to the brand then within Florida? Is that where you're picking up the majority of your sales, or have you gone a little more nationwide? Have you gone international? How's that looking?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people that come stay, and I would say most of them are from out of the country. We have a lot of Japanese riders, a lot of Canadian riders. We have a rider from Switzerland there right now, Levin. He races U23, Italian riders. So a lot of them have been international. And then on Sundays, we do kind of like a open coaching session for the locals to come and ride and do one-on-one coaching with myself, Will, and Rain. And so, I mean, we're getting both local and, international. So it's pretty good.
Yeah. Sounds like a really, really nice mix up. So
yeah,
it's, like I said, can't wait to see how it progresses. And I'll certainly be watching it on YouTube, because I am a subscriber to your channel, because I subscribe to everybody's channels, because I'm always trying to keep my finger on the pulse, so to speak.
Yeah.
So just kind of changing tack a little bit. You're still on Hyper bicycles at the moment. I saw the new kit get released for 2025, which looks absolutely awesome. How are things with Hyper at the minute, and what are the plans for 2025? I mean, we're recording this on the day after that the announcement came about GT kind of being put on pause. So how do you see things with Hyper for 2025? What are your views on the state of the bike industry at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, with GT and Haro, it's definitely, it's sad to see brands like that step out of BMX racing. As far as Hyper, I feel like, they built their brand on BMX racing, and then I think they kind of moved into freestyle, and I don't want to say they really stepped away from racing, but I think there was a few years where they were in a gray area and not doing a whole lot in racing. So, they're just getting back into racing, and it's super cool to just kind of be that guy that's, I guess, on the forefront of their racing brand. Well, I guess they have Marshall now too, which he stands out way more than I do, doing the front flips and the back flips. So that's awesome. I'm super stoked he's on the Hyper team now. And for 2025, we're just working on developing a high-end race frame that, that I can compete on, hopefully in LA 2028, or at least, win USA BMX races on the frame, and really just get Hyper submersed back into the BMX racing.
Yeah. It's I think in a situation like this where you've got brands stepping away, because obviously the likes of, like you said, GT and Haro have stepped away at the end of this year, and then you've had brands that have been there but gone away in the past, like Redline and that kind of thing. I always think that if, a lot of people are zigging, you should be zagging. So it might be an opportunity for Hyper to step in and actually make a name for themselves in a period where they haven't got a lot of competition to do that. So I'm excited to see what Hyper can actually bring in. I actually rode a Hyper Cruiser back in the day, and it was honestly, it was one of my favourite bikes I've ever ridden. I think when I actually got it, it was the only Hyper frame in the UK. I had a back and forward with Steve Spencer when he was there, and he sorted that out for me, which was absolutely awesome. And I think that frame is still knocking around somewhere. I've long since sold it, but I think it is still getting ridden somewhere in the Midlands region. So it must be 15 plus years old now, that frame. But hopefully it's still going strong. Yeah, absolutely. So moving on to the Olympics then, and kind of your road toward Paris. Kind of give us a bit of a background on how that went, because obviously you got there, you were the reserve athlete. Tell us a little bit about your Parisian experience.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. Definitely just went into this season with, I put that goal at the top of my list, and I was a full-time athlete pretty much this whole year until after Paris, and it was just eat, sleep, and train. I put all the projects and stuff I wanted to do on the farm to the side, make sure I was getting plenty of rest and put all my focus and attention on, trying to make the team. And, I was proud of myself too. It was probably one of my best years of racing. I mean, this year, honestly, was probably one of my best, biggest, and busiest years of my life. And it's been an awesome year, and I put everything I could into making the team. I got a podium at the second stop of the World Cup series in Brisbane, and that was just, it was unreal. I mean, I still, see videos of me at that race or on the podium, and it still blows my mind that, I made the main, and then not only made the main, but got on the podium. There was a little, Joris went down super hard. So that kind of opened up a spot or two for me to get the podium. But, I was in the main, and I was in the position to capitalize on all that carnage that went down. But yeah. And then, of course, I would have loved to have been one of the riders competing in the Olympics, but just seeing where I was at, like I was talking about earlier with 2022 and struggling, and then 2023 was a little better. And then, to really just step it up and be the best version of myself in 2024 and, coming super close to that huge goal of mine, it felt great. And then getting to experience, the village, and just even the practices I got to practice and be a part of on the Olympic track, the test event, all that. Like, I don't know. It's hard for me to just like even express how cool and awesome everything was. And it's hard for me to put it into words, like I said.
Yeah, because we had Ross Cullen on the podcast on an earlier episode, and he's been the GB reserve athlete twice now, and he said he doesn't want to repeat it a third time. He wants to be qualified for LA in 2028, but he just said, he was flying in practice, he was racing the best he'd ever felt. He said the track was just second to none. Give us your perspective on the Paris track, because I'd love to hear it from you as well. What you think of that track? Could they have improved anything? Was it the perfect Olympic venue? Because obviously it's a track that's been there and had World Cups on it, so it wasn't purpose-built for the event, even though they made the changes. How do you see that track as an Olympic venue? Do you think that should be the model for all Olympic tracks moving forward?
honestly, I love the track. I think it made for pretty good racing too. It was so fun to ride the second straight, the third straight, the last straight. I mean, all the straights. I really liked the track. I enjoyed riding it. I think for the Olympics, the track should definitely be built. We should come do the test event, get to try it out and then come back for the racing. Like, I think that's the way the Olympics should be. But I mean, that's not how it went. I think if they're gonna start putting, the Olympics at tracks that are already there, then in LA it should be at Chula. I mean, that's what seems fair to me. But personally,
Yeah.
my opinion, I think the track should be built, and I don't know about having, all these training sessions on it. And, that's something we've kind of lost in BMX really is like the Grant, like I was just thinking about it at Grants, like we showed up, we got one day of practice, we got to figure the track out, and then we're racing the next morning at 8 a.m. Like that's the part of BMX racing that we don't get anymore really. So I think for the Olympics, it'd be better if they did it that way, because it's going to reward the riders. I mean, that can go out and learn the track the best, learn the best lines. Not that anyone in the Olympics can't do that, but there's going to be riders there that can do it better than others, at least.
Yeah. So it's almost like a blind setup in that you turn up, you learn the track, you race, and then, you've just got to make the best of it like you did at the Grands. I think actually going back to the Grands track this year as well, it was more of a technical track, I think, that it's ever been before. And, I did read a few grumblings online on certain message forums and things of that nature that people weren't massively happy with it. But, I also hear from a few other people who are based in the US that they feel like track should almost start to step up in the US and the tracks are too easy. Do you think that track at the Grands was as it should have been? Do you think it should have been harder? Do you think it should have been easier? What was your viewpoint on that?
I like the track. I wasn't a fan of the 290s at the back half of the track, just for the pros at least, because the way we entered those turns was kind of like one line. But to me, the track wasn't overly technical. I think it could have even been more technical, but you know how it is with people online. It's never good enough. It's too easy. It's too hard. Like after the Worlds in Glasgow, like all I saw online was how, the US tracks need to be harder. They're not technical enough, blah, blah, blah. But then USA BMX builds a technical track and it's too technical and there's too many crashes and all that. So, I mean, you're never going to please everyone, but I thought the track was good. I was glad it was a little more technical, and I think it could have even been even more technical.
Yeah. In terms of tracks that you've raced around the world, then I know you mentioned Brisbane and Rotorua, which I thought for World Cup tracks for the first time we've been to those venues was some of the best racing I think we've had in the World Cup in a few years, and I also thought the venues were superb. Are there any tracks around the world where you've gone, that's amazing, I love that, I'd love to ride there more often? What are the tracks worldwide that stand out for you that you've ridden on?
Brisbane definitely stood out to me. I thought that was a good racetrack. I like Glasgow too, just, more technical side. I like Sarasota as well too. Like when I go to Sarasota, even though I ride there pretty much on a weekly basis, it's not a track where I can show up and, I ride there all the time, so I can do the track fairly easy, but I have to put effort into hitting the jumps, doing the straights, especially if I want to be smooth, clean, and, build my speed around the track. Like those three tracks. I love Papendal too. It's just, I love Papendal, the venue all around. So you can never go wrong with that. But I would say Brisbane, Glasgow are the two that are really sticking out to me. Sarasota as well. I'm sure there's tons of other tracks out there too that I love, but those three off the top of my head are stand out. Yeah.
It's Glasgow, I think especially as, you know, it was a great track for the Worlds. I thought the Worlds were amazing on there, and I don't think that track gets used half as much as it could, just because of the way it's organised there and that kind of thing. And I'd really love to go back to Glasgow for another major event. We've had one UK national there, but I'd love to go there for, like, I don't know, a European Cup round or something like that. And we've got the new Supercross track in Cardiff in Wales as well, which is an amazing venue. So there's plenty building over here. Are there any more 8-meter tracks being slated to be built in the US? I haven't heard anything. Do you know any different?
No, I haven't heard
Apart
anything.
From yours, obviously, when you get round to it.
Still dreaming about that, like, every day, you know? Like, we got this piece of land, we're like, okay, we're going to build a full-size track there. And, but no, I was going to even mention that track that you mentioned in Wales. It looks like a really, you know, good technical track that is, you know, still good for amateurs, but challenging for elites as well.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of good reports about it, and unfortunately, they've just been hit with the floods and that kind of stuff. So they've got their own challenges to deal with. But in terms of a venue, I can see us being there for a major championship at some point, whether it's the Worlds or the Euros or something like that. I know the people who run it, and they've definitely got their eye set on doing big things there. So I've got a feeling you might end up at Cardiff at some point, Jeremy, hopefully before the end of your career. So that would be awesome. That would be awesome. So just talking of tracks and races then, what would be the dream race for you to go to anywhere in the world? Is there a race that you've not been to where you just thought, do you know what? I would love to hit that race up if I had the opportunity. Is there anything there for you?
That's a good question. Honestly, off the top of my head, I would want to do, it's far from Supercross, but one of the French indoor races. I think it's, I don't know. What's the name of the Avion or?
Yeah, Avion, Saint-Etienne.
Those races they look so cool. The environment looks awesome. So, you know, off the top of my head, that's one race I think would be really fun to do. Other than that, I'm kind of drawing a blank. There's nothing that really is, you know, popping out at me. You know, I'm lucky enough I've got to race pretty much all over the world, a lot of the World Cups, but I would like to do, you know, I wasn't doing World Cups when they would do like the Rotterdam indoor, even though those were, you know, smaller, tighter tracks. It's still, like we were talking about earlier, one of those tracks where you got to show up, you got to learn it, and then you're racing it.
Yeah, makes it that little bit more challenging for sure.
Yeah.
But, it's bizarre that you actually mentioned the French indoor races, because I was recording episode 21 with Jace Cunning this morning, the Australian BMXer and mountain bike rider, and I asked him the exact same question, and he said, French indoor races, and they are amazing. I've been lucky to go to a few of them, and they're as good as you see on the live feeds. It's just an amazing atmosphere. So if those opportunities come along, just grab them with both hands. That's all I'm saying.
The Worlds in forget the city it was, but 2022 in France was just the French. They just love cycling. So just being like, I was in the stands watching, but just how packed the stands were, like the fans letting off the blue, white, and red smoke bombs, and just how stoked they were on the French athletes. Like, I had goosebumps just being in the stands, like wishing I was out there, obviously, but like just that environment is so cool. And you kind of see that in like that small indoor race as well. It's just tons of hype. You know, everyone's screaming and yelling once the gate drops. It would be super cool to, you know, go and experience that.
Yeah, you can't beat a French Worlds, I don't think. A French Worlds or a South American Worlds, they always seem to be the ones that, you know, people remember and talk about for years to come. So
you can't beat a French race, but then you also can't beat the French racers there as well. So
that's very true. That is very true. Is there a race within your career that you'd love to do again? A race that you'd like to go, oh, do you know what, that one got away from me. I'd really like to have another go at it.
That's a good question too. I'm drawing blanks. I'm not good being put on the spot, but I would like to say the one in Italy because I feel like that was one of the best I was riding. And then obviously, like I said, I crashed and kind of helped me discover the Aker brand farm,
Yeah.
possibly the reason of me discovering that. But uh, no, I mean, I think I don't know if it's helps me or hurts me, but I'm always like, even when I was younger, it was like I was never like I watched the '08 Olympics, and after that, I was never like, oh, I want to be an Olympian. I'm going to train. I'm going to become one. I was like, okay, what's the next national I'm going to race at? What's the next race I can train for and try to win? So, yeah, I can't think of any races, think back to any races where like, oh, I wish I could redo that. I'm sure there's tons of them, there's
You'll
probably
probably
tons
think of
of
them
them,
all after
but
we finish talking.
yeah,
So,
yeah, of
yeah.
course.
Yeah, but sometimes it's good to kind of walk away from racing with no regrets and go, do you know what? I did them all, and
Yeah.
they all worked out the way they worked out, even the ones where you ended up injured because it ended up changing the course of your life. So that's quite a cool thing. This is another question that I've kind of dropped in as well with for the first time on the previous episode. But I'm going to ask you the same question. And it's the Frankenstein BMXer question, I've termed it as. So what we can do is we can kind of going to go into like a bit of a fantasy world, and we're going to create the ultimate BMXer. So what you can do is you can select 4 riders. You can take the physical strength of one rider. You can take the bike handling skill of another rider. You can take the mental toughness of someone else. And it doesn't have to be a BMX if you don't want it to be. It can be the mental toughness of anybody. And you can take the social media kind of savviness of someone, mix them all together and create the perfect BMXer. But who are the 4 people that you would use for that category?
I like that. So I'll start with the last one, social media, and I'm going to have to choose Barry Nobles on that.
Yeah.
I think he's done an amazing job from Instagram, YouTube, all the social media platforms he's on. I think he's capitalized the most on that out of all BMX racers. Let's see, what was the first one again?
The first one was just pure physical strength. If you could have the physical strength of any rider, who would it be for this Frankenstein rider?
I know there's some Dutchies out there that are super strong. For physical strength, I would probably choose Neek. He's lean, he's tall, he's got a good build, and I've seen him in the gym, and he's definitely moving a lot of weight there. So he doesn't always come off the gate maybe the fastest, but it's not long after the gate to where he's at top speed and he's saying see you later to everybody else. So yeah, I would have to choose Neek on that one.
Okay. And then the next one was bike handling skill.
Bike handling. I think I'll go with Carlos Ramirez for that, because I've seen him just even in some sticky situations where he's maybe going over a first jump and he's in this tiny little hole between 2 riders where he probably shouldn't be, and like he's touching one rider on his right side and his back wheel's over to the left, and he just comes out of it ahead of both of the riders somehow and stays on his bike, and then makes another 3 passes in the first corner after that.
Yeah. It seems like the South Americans have got kind of berm warfare down to a fine art. They find holes where nobody else finds holes. So I can totally see why you pick Carlos as an answer for that one.
The South Americans they're just so passionate, they're ready to die out there on the track, and they just they don't think about the consequences. They're they're doing something different.
Yeah, definitely. And then you see you've got upcoming like Thomas Materano and that kind of stuff, and the future's just getting even brighter for the South Americans. So that's good. So we've got Neek for the strength, Carlos for the skills, Barry for the social media, and then the next category was mental toughness. Who would you like to have the mental toughness of in this Frankenstein BMXer?
I'm going to choose Joris for that one. You know, when you've won every race, every title, and you're still winning, and mentally he's, I would say, one of the best ever in BMX racing, honestly. Yeah,
and it's his consistency as well for me that just stands out. He's been doing it since 2011 as an elite or something like that, and we're 13 years down the line, and he's winning gold medals, and he's got 6 USA BMX titles. It's going to be a hell of a tough, a tough record to beat. So can totally understand why you've gone with that. So that's a really nice mix. Neek, Carlos, Barry, and Joris to make the ultimate Frankenstein BMX.
That's the $1 million BMX rider right there, I think.
Right there. Yeah, absolutely. Who is your favorite pro to race? Who do you line up against and think, I'm racing this guy, I know it's going to be tough, but I know it's going to be good? Who's the guy who you like lining up next to?
I would maybe, it's hard. Like, I'm going to pick Sylvain with this one, because you never know what you're going to get. You know, he could get out front, and it's hard to chase him down, but it's just a good rider that you can race the whole track with and go back and forth with, but you're not going to be slowing each other down. You know what I mean? So, I don't want to say he'll let you go under him or anything, but he's not going to end the race right there, because he knows he might just pull you back down the whichever straight you're headed into. So I feel like he's a good guy to where he's going to race you super aggressive, but you're going to be able to keep racing forward. You're not going to be, losing speed, and you can just really duke it out all the way till he, pedals and stretches at the finish line.
Yeah. And, you're always good for a podium selfie with Sylvain afterwards as well.
Yeah.
So he's got that relaxed vibe about him as well. So I can totally understand why you've definitely picked him. So kind of as we move towards wrapping it up then, what does the future hold for Jeremy Smith?
That's a good question. I need to, keep dialing that in for myself. I thought after the Olympics, I was going to be able to, I knew I wasn't going to be able to chill out, because I had so much stuff planned for the Aker Farm and everything. But I think, the end of this year, we did the track rebuild. So that was fun. It really kicked my butt and made me actually want to get back to racing and training. I was like, man, this is tough. So it was good to, for me to have that balance of where, the beginning of the year, I trained super hard, put everything into trying to make the Olympic team. And then this last half of the year, I was able to just fully dive in and get all the working and projects kind of out of my system. But, headed into 2025, I would definitely like to focus back a little more on the athlete side and give a good run at USA BMX Pro title, and then as well as just, keep building the Aker Farm and pushing for that full-size track I've been dreaming about since, before I even got the property, and just building the Aker brand, really, start working with more riders and kind of go into a little bit of more of a coaching role, as well as just help Hyper, build their brand back into BMX racing, and, just keep myself in the BMX industry for as long as I can.
Fantastic. It sounds like you've got multiple angles that you can contribute to BMX racing with, which I think is absolutely superb. I expect that, you know, when your racing days do come to an end, it certainly won't be the last that we see of you within BMX racing, which I think
No.
is an awesome thing.
Yeah, you're correct with that. And, you know, that's one thing I feel like I have to, you know, just like when I was growing up, you know, they had the Chula Vista Training Center, and, you know, it's more clear now of like the kind of path you need to go to, you know, become a top elite. But when I was that age, you know, I had the support from my family. I had my older brother, Josh, who taught me how to ride a bike and has taught me, you know, everything I know in racing now. But I was, I would say, mature enough to say, okay, you know, I'm 17. I'm a top expert rider, you know, top 5 NAG rider. You know, in 3 years, when I'm 20 or 21, I could be a top pro. Like I had to learn, you know, just growing up with, you know, working part-time, trying to go to college, racing a pro, to then realize like, man, you know, this isn't, you know, working at a machine shop and, you know, going to college to become whatever isn't really giving me, you know, the fulfillment that I, you know, want out of life. So I think one way I can contribute a lot to the riders that are coming that are, you know, 15, 16, I can, you know, help them navigate that path and to show them and tell them, you know, like, you know, you're 17 now, like this is what you need to be doing to, by the time you're 20, you can be a top pro. So, you know, that excites me a lot. You know, I love, you know, just, you know, helping out riders. And, you know, that's kind of what I needed when I was young. You know, I didn't know really what to do. And, you know, that's good. You know, that's what's led me to be able to create Aker brand and to make that successful.
Okay, with that in mind then, what would be the one piece of advice then that you would give a young BMXer coming up, like say somebody in the teenage years, 15, 16, 17 years old, wants to make it in the sport, wants to be a top pro? You've got one piece of advice to give them. What would it be?
I would say not go pro as early as you can, but, you know, get yourself into that, you know, the big classes, the junior men, the U23, the elite, you know, get over to a World Cup when you're maybe still junior and get that experience, because until you've raced a World Cup, you're really kind of just missing out on the whole, I don't even know what word to use to describe that, but you can learn so much. You get a new appreciation for the sport when you're at a World Cup, and it just kind of shows you what level you need to be at.
Yeah. I think it's a dose of reality for a young rider when they get to the first couple of World Cups as a junior, because I think it's a case of they get in there and they go, this is amazing. I actually really want to do this. I can't be any more excited about going home and training and racing. And then there'll be another group who'll get there and go, Jesus, this is like harder than I thought it was going to be. I don't think I'm ever going to get there. Maybe I need to think about doing something else. And I think once you get to the World Cup and you're racing at that level, once you've done it once or twice, I think deep down a rider will know whether they're cut out for it or not.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it's like what I tell kids is like, most of the time, your first year pro, you're going to struggle. You know what I mean? There's been very few riders who've went elite and they're just winning, you know, like Sam, Isaac, Cam Wood are just 3 off the top of my head that really entered the elite class and were like making a name for themselves. So like, you got to get in there, you got to experience it, you got to learn it. You know, you can stay amateur as long as you want and win all the national titles you want, but more than likely when you step up into that elite class, you're going to be going through some growing pains. So the sooner you can get in there, the sooner you can learn that, the sooner you're going to realize what you need to do, or you might realize that, you know, it really isn't for me, you know?
Yeah. A dose of reality. But, I think no matter what that reality is, I think it all works out for the best in the end.
Yeah.
So,
completely.
As we get to the end of this, Jeremy, I always give people an opportunity to thank friends, family, sponsors, plug anything they want to plug. The floor is yours. Go for it.
Awesome. Well, I'll start by thanking you for having me on and, letting me talk about my BMX career, and my business, I guess you can call it. It doesn't really feel like a business. It's just, my life. But yeah, Aker brand. And of course, I got to thank my parents, family, my older brother, Josh. Like I said earlier, he's the one who pretty much got me into BMX, who's, taught me everything I know on a bike. My fiance, I got engaged this year. She's a huge supporter of, everything I'm doing and keeps me motivated. And I like to thank Hyper Bikes as well for giving me an opportunity to, help them create a race frame and be their man out on the BMX scene representing them. And then I got to thank Will, my business partner, for holding down our fort, when I'm, still trying to be a BMX athlete and I'm gone, months, weeks at a time. And, he's there, he's got my back, help building our business and, getting riders to come stay and, keeping our dream alive.
No, it's fantastic. Like I say, I'm a big fan of everything that you're doing, and I can't wait to see what comes next. So yeah, it's going to be a while that we're watching the Jeremy Smith story, and I can't wait to see what unfolds. So
appreciate it, Rich.
Yeah, Jeremy Smith, thank you so much for being a part of the BMX Commentator Podcast, and hopefully we'll catch up in person at a European round of the World Cups next year, and we'll be able to have a proper chat in person.
Yeah, we all love hearing you commentate live at the World Cups. I think you do an amazing job at that, and hopefully they keep hiring you, because I don't know who's going to be able to do it better than you.
Oh, that's amazing, mate. Thank you so much for that. Coming from the athletes, that's awesome. That's all I need to hear, that I'm doing the right thing. So thank you so much.
Keep it up.
Okay, cool. Thanks, mate. Speak to you soon.
Yep. Have a good night. See you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the BMX Commentator Podcast, the raddest thing to come out of Wigan since Pools Pies and the A49. Don't forget to hit the follow button wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to share this episode on your social media channels. To get in touch with the show, drop an Instagram DM to @BMX Commentator. Now, get your ass out to the BMX track and get racing. We'll see you for another show very soon.